Now, what were the steps? What were the steps that the Portuguese took in order to establish or to keep their trade in gold alive? So we're going to look at the ways. What were those ways that the Portuguese used in order to make their gold trade alive? So number one, they changed import taxes on goods coming from the ports they controlled in East Africa. Now, what happened was that in all the coasts that they were in East Africa, when the people were bringing in things, they were not charging anything. So they changed the import taxes on those goods so that people should maintain that route. Because now they controlled, we have said that they controlled East Africa after defeating the Arabs. It means that all the ports there now were in their hands. So therefore, they changed that people were maybe paying very little. They changed the taxes so that the trade should keep on flowing. And not only that, they also ensured that every Asian and African ship had to get the Portuguese permit or passport before it was put on the sea. So we are saying here that since they controlled the ports there, so all the Arabs were like begging from the Portuguese now to use those ports. So we are saying that the ship or the ship that were there for the Africans and for the Asians, that is the Arabs, they were supposed to have the Portuguese permit before they were put on the sea to travel. So that permit, it means that still more they were controlling. It means they were controlling the trade themselves, the Portuguese. Now, to counter the Portuguese growing influence, the Arabs, therefore, they did a number of things in order to counter the Portuguese influence. Because we have said that the Portuguese, they took over now. They took over control of the East Africa. It means now trade was no longer in the hands of the Arabs. But still more, the Arabs, they wanted something still more to survive. They were traders, so they had to find other ways of surviving. So what did they do? Number one, they became friends with African chiefs in the interior. So after they were displaced in the East Africa, then it happened that they entered the interior of Africa and became friends of African chiefs. That is the source of God. And Arabs also developed new routes to the interior to avoid the Portuguese. So they developed the Arabs. They started using the new routes into the interior because the Portuguese now they dominated the eastern coast. So therefore, they also dominated all the known ways. So the Arabs here were saying they developed the new routes to the interior, and also Africans preferred the Arabic goods that were of superior quality than those of the Portuguese. So we see to it that later on, because the Africans were used to contact with the Arabs, and they liked so much the Arabs' goods than the newcomers, the Portuguese. And also the volume of gold then declined. The volume of gold that was coming to the eastern coast there, it declined. So with that, then it forced the Portuguese to move into the Central Africa to control the source of gold. So we are saying that because the Arabs now were no longer actively exporting gold from the interior to the eastern coast, the places where they have been grabbed. Therefore, it meant that the flow of gold from the interior to eastern coast, it declined. The reason was that the Arabs, they developed other ways, other routes. Then they were sneaking off the went with the gold. So therefore, later on, the Portuguese, they wanted to, or they moved into the interior of Africa with the aim of controlling gold from the source. So, what were the factors that led to the decline of the Portuguese influence in Central Africa? So, just as we have said that the Portuguese, after they got the eastern coast, then they also entered into the Central Africa in order to control trade, and they entered the Mashonaland or the Mwenimtapa kingdom, where later on they had that influence. As we have said, we have seen that they were sending their representatives to control different areas, and some of them they were sent even into the Mwenimtapa. We talk of Father Gonzalo and many others. So they went there and controlled the trade. But later on, their influence declined. So we are going to look at the factors here that led to the decline of the Portuguese influence in Central Africa. Number one was the competition from the Dutch and the British. So Portugal lost control of trade in India and East Indies to the Dutch and to the British. When we come to the Form 4 topic, that is the second from last, that is when we'll be looking at the decolonization of India. We'll look at it to say there, the British were the ones who colonized India. But the first people to go there, as we have seen, they were the Portuguese. So that's why here we're mentioning that they lost control of trade in India there. They lost it to the Dutch, people from Netherlands or Holland, and to the British. And later on, the British there in India, they colonized that area. And also the other factor is the lack of settlers, lack of people who would come from Portugal and settle permanently in Central Africa. So Portugal's small population could not manage to occupy the vast lands. So as a result, they were just sending few individuals to go and dominate. As a result, they could not dominate thousands of people, hence they easily lost control. Had it been that they were sending the people to settle permanently there in the Mwenimtapa, then they could easily control everything. So they declined there. Their influence declined because their population is small. The population of Portugal is very small. And also reliance on ex-criminals is another factor. So they were using the ex-convicts or the degredados who lacked creativity as well as resourcefulness. So Portugal, to explore different areas, they were sending the ex-convicts, those people who had just come from prison, those who were arrested, they were in prison for maybe serious offenses, the criminals. So those ones they were sent to say go and explore there. So it was like they didn't care if they die with the winds or the weather there. They could not care. So those people who were sent there are not creative as well as resourcefulness. And also insufficient economic resources was another factor. Portugal itself did not have sufficient economic resources to run the huge lands outside Portugal. So they had not enough economic resources. As you can see, or as you know, Portugal is just a very small country in Europe. Another factor is the unhealthy tropical climate. Unhealthy tropical climate. So the hot and malarial climate of Central Africa caused death of many settlers. So the few people or the few Portuguese who came, most of them they died of the hot weather and again the malarial climate. And also the challenge from the European powers. They also faced the challenge from the European powers like the Dutch, the English, that is the British, the French, and the Turks from Turkey, who were competing for control of the Indian Ocean trade. and control of Central Africa, where gold was coming from. So we are saying that other European countries, they were also interested in the same area, that is Mwenemutapa, where the gold was coming from. And the other factor was the communication problem. So the Portuguese influence declined because of communication problem. So the Portuguese, they refused to learn African languages, and this made their administration difficult. So when the Portuguese came and dominated the Central Africa, they did not want to learn the African languages. As a result, they were trying to force Africans to speak Portuguese, of which they could not manage because they were forcing many people to adopt the language of the few. Hence, there was that communication problem. They could not easily coordinate properly because of language barrier. And also, unhealthy climate. This made the area unattractive for them to work. For instance, the many places they were too humid and too hot, while others were too cold. So that climate there, they were not attractive to the Portuguese. Hence, they could not come in large numbers because in some places it was very cold. In other places, very hot. As a result, they were not attracted to those places. Also, colonization by Spain was another factor that led to the decline of the Portuguese influence in Central Africa. So Spain at one time colonized Portugal. So Spain had no interest to develop the overseas interest of Portugal. So what happened was that Portugal lost her grip on Central Africa. So Spain, that is in Europe there, Spain is just the neighboring countries with Portugal. And it happened that Spain colonized Portugal. Therefore, it means that all the affairs of Portugal were in the hands of Spain. But at the same time, Spain was not interested in developing the interest of Portugal outside Europe. As a result, Portugal lost that interest or lost their influence in Africa. And also the tropical diseases claimed the Portuguese lives, the tropical diseases. So they suffered from diseases like smallpox, malaria, which made it difficult for the Portuguese to administer the coast effectively. So they were unable to administer all the areas that they dominated or they got from the Arabs. As a result, most of them they died of malaria and smallpox. And also hostile local tribes. So some local tribes, they were not friendly to the Portuguese. So the Portuguese faced resistance from the tribes such as the Zimba and the Tonga. When talk of the Tonga, these are not the Tonga of Malawi. These are the Tonga originally from Zambia. And because they were cruel to Africans. So the Portuguese were not good people to Africans. They were not treating them as good as people as such. So they were treating them cruelly. As such, some of the tribes, they resisted and started to fight back to the Portuguese. The other factor for the decline of the influence of the Portuguese in Central Africa, it was the internal conflict. So the prezos or the preza owners, that is the farm owners, the farms in Portuguese they were called, or the estates were called the prezas. So the prezos, that is the preza owners or the owners of those estates, they raided each other. They were raiding each other in the Zambezi Valley, and those that were defeated had to leave. So again, that one, it weakened the position of the Portuguese in the region, as it reduced their population or the population of the settlers in the area. So we are saying here that the Portuguese had farms, and each farm was independent of the other. As a result, they were also they were quarreling amongst each other, and they could also fight this farm against this farm, and the farm that lost, then they were forced to leave Africa. As a result, the number of those people who were in Africa, it was reducing. Hence, they lost their influence in Africa. And also, slave trade led to the decline of the Portuguese influence. So slave trade hindered the missionary work as well as the administrative work. Remember, we said that the Portuguese, they also aimed at spreading Christianity. Now, at the same time, slave trade was taking place by the Arabs. They were taking the Swahili Arabs. They were embarking on slave trade, and that slavery, it hindered the missionary or the missionary work, the spread of the gospel, as well as the administrative work, how to manage the places of their influence. As a result, the influence of the Portuguese went down. Also, inadequate income. The Portuguese uh, obtained from gold trade. The income that was obtained from gold trade was not enough to pay the administration for the administration of that area. For instance, paying the payment of the soldiers and the officials. So they could not manage only from the gold trade. They wanted at least to have other things to generate the income. So the income was not enough that was generated from the gold alone, gold trade alone, to pay the many soldiers that were there. As a result, most of the soldiers, the Portuguese, they started to go out. They started to move and go back to Portugal. And another factor for the decline of Portuguese influence is the destruction of settlements. So the Portuguese ill treatment of the local people caused resentment or bitterness among the Africans who rebelled against them. For example, the Shona rebelled in 1627, and later the Rosui of Changamire. Changamire was their leader. They destroyed the Portuguese settlements and forced them out of Mashonaland in 1693. So, as we have pointed out, that the Portuguese, they were not treating Africans well. As a result, most of the Africans, they started to challenge the administration of the Portuguese, and they started to rebel. So we are talking of the Shona. In 1627, they rebelled, and later the Rosui, they also rebelled, and they forced the Portuguese, who were already few, they forced them to go out of Mashona land. And finally, the re-establishment of the Arab influence in the East Coast. So the re-establishment of the Arab influence in the East Coast also made the Portuguese to lose control of trade with Africans. So you see to it the drama that happened here. When the Portuguese first came to East Coast, they found the Arabs there. Now, they displaced the Arabs, and when the Arabs saw to it that they cannot just go back and go back to Arabia and stay, they entered into the interior and started to control or to trade directly with the chiefs in the internal, trading with God. But later on, the Portuguese also followed, and they dominated there. They displaced the Arabs, and the Arabs now, they went back to the eastern coast and started to dominate that area. So it meant that the Arabs, they re-established themselves at the east coast and displaced the Portuguese. Now we have looked at the factors that led to the decline of the Portuguese influence in the eastern coast of Africa. So this time around, let's look at the impact of gold trade on Central Africa, the impact of gold trade in Central Africa. Number one, the positive impact. That's what we are going to look at. Number one was the spread of Christianity. Was the spread of Christianity, as we have pointed out that they introduced Christianity in Central Africa, that is in Mwene Mutapa Kingdom. Number two was the stimulation of mining. Stimulation of mining. So the foreign traders intensified the mining activities. And another impact was the introduction of new crops such as the citrus fruits, the cassava, groundnuts, maize. They were introduced by the Portuguese. So maize later dominated millet and sorghum as the staple food. Remember, when we were looking at the pre-colonial kingdoms, we said that the major crops that were grown by those people, pre-colonial people, were millet as well as sorghum. But the coming of the Portuguese, they introduced other crops like cassava, groundnuts, and maize. And later, people adopted maize as the major staple food for their region. And again, the other influence or impact is through the trade. The East African and Central Africa, it was exposed to the outside world. So with that trade, Africa was exposed to the external world. And that one, it improved the Central African economy. And also accumulation of wealth, especially the Mwenemtapa. So some middlemen also they benefited a lot. So people like the Mwenemtapa kingdom, people had wealth. They were rich because they were trading with people from very far and the other middlemen. It also encouraged trade. It encouraged trade between the interior Africa and the eastern coast. So the presence of the Portuguese or the presence of that gold trade, it enabled that there should be contact between Central Africa and the East Africa. So they were always in contact. And also security. The chiefs received guns as well as protection from the Portuguese and Arabs. Remember, when the Arabs came, it was like they were protecting that area where they were interested, where there was God. And the same with the Portuguese. And not only that, they were also giving guns to the local people. As a result, they were well secured. And let's look at the negative impact of the gold trade. Number one, the contacts between the coast and the European powers later led to colonization of East Africa by Britain and Germany. So with that contact between the Eastern Africans and the Europeans, it later led to the colonization, whereby we see to it that the British, they started to dominate. They came and they started to claim the areas. So they claimed the Mwenemtapa area, that is Zimbabwe, Zambia, and the Germans, they got Tanzania. And also increased conflict in the region with the introduction of firearms. So with those arms that were given to the local people, the local chiefs, they were they were eager enough. They wanted, all right, now this is the high time that we can conquer others. So those African chiefs, they embarked on attacking others. Hence, it increased the conflicts in the region, in this region of Africa. And again, political interference into the African societies. So it also led to the political interference, e.g. the Portuguese interference in the administration of the Mwenemtapa. At one point in time, the Mwenemtapa became just a puppet, like Mavura. So there was the other Mwenemtapa who wanted to drive out the Portuguese. But later on, the Portuguese, they backfired and defeated the Mwenemtapa and chose someone who was just a puppet to be the Mwenemtapa, but all the control of the kingdom, it was in their hands. So that political interference in African societies, it was not good at all. But here we are saying that it was also another impact, to say the presence of the Europeans, it led them to be interfering into African societies. So they interfered with the affairs of the Africans. And also participation in slave trade. So porters carrying the goods to the east were later sold as slaves, and that one the slave trade brought suffering among the Africans. So we are saying that we have said here that they were going into the interior to get those resources like ivory and even the gold. But later we see to it that they wanted people to carry their goods to the coast. So those people who were carrying those goods to the coast, they were also sold there as slaves. With that, then it brought a lot of suffering among the Africans because their population was reducing now and again. And also depletion of African resources, depletion of African resources. So the gold uh, trade, it led to the depletion of African resource because the huge amounts of goods were used up uh, as a result of centuries of mining. So this mining or gold trade we are talking about here, it did not just occur in 10 years. We talk of hundreds of years. People were trading in gold. And human resources also were sold out as slaves, and these are the people who could otherwise develop Africa. So we see to it that due to gold trade, the people who were carrying gold, as we have already said, they were sold at the eastern coast there. Then it made that the population was going down, down, and down, because the people who were selected to carry those things, they were those energetic people who could develop their societies. Now to this far, we have come to the end of this topic that we were looking at. Now we have looked at this wonderful topic here, that is the growth of trade in the pre-colonial East Africa. So we are looking at how gold trade was introduced in East and Central Africa, or was managed. So we have first looked at the first people who were there in eastern coast of Africa. We have identified some of the places in eastern Africa that were so influential in this gold. We have mentioned two major participants, the Arabs as well as the Portuguese. Mainly our central focus was on the Portuguese. How did the Portuguese come into contact with East Africa and Central Africa, and how did they manage this gold trade? And we have also looked at their influence in East and Central Africa. They grabbed the land by force from the Arabs, and later on they dominated, but their influence declined. We have looked at the factors, and we have also looked at the impact. What impact did the coming or the participation of the Portuguese in trade in East and Central Africa, what impact did it have on Africa? So here are some of the few questions that you are going to handle. So the first one is explain what led to the development of the Zanje civilization. And the second one, why did the Portuguese capture the East African coast from the Arabs and move into Central Africa? Why did they capture the East? Why did they move into Central Africa? And the other question, explain the reason for the Arab-Portuguese conflict in the land of the Zanji. Another one, you are going to state the reasons for the Portuguese victory over the Arabs in the land of the Zanji. So they are just very, very, very straightforward questions. So what you do by answering these questions is, first you sit back, be attentive, go through and learn up to the end, then answer your questions. So the questions continue. Number 6 is, or number 5 is mention any two Portuguese trading ports in eastern coast of Africa. And the other one, the next question is explain explain the positive impact of gold trade on Central Africa. And the next question is explain the negative impact of the Portuguese trade on Central Africa. And finally, I will need you to write an essay. By this time, I know you are a very good essay writer. So I want you to write very good essay. So here is the essay that you are going to write. Discuss the factors that led to the decline of the Portuguese in Central Africa. Discuss factors that led to the decline of Portuguese influence in Central Africa. So after you are done, as usual, as I usually say, what you are going to do is you are going to write on a piece of paper, direct on a piece of paper. Take a pen and a paper. Usually, if you use the black pen, the better. So answer all those questions on the paper. Then later on, capture or scan. Then you can forward them to the WhatsApp number that is appearing here. So on this WhatsApp number, that is where you send, or else you can send by email. I have the email address here. So you send it by the email. Then what I'm going to do is I'll download your paper, then I'll mark, then I'll do the same way to give you the feedback. So in such a way, then you'll be able to follow through everything. So don't just type on a phone. Don't type just only like the computer, like when you're using the email. Don't do that. I want you to use pen and paper. The reason is that at the end of it all, you are going to use pen and paper to answer the money questions. So I want at least to assist you maybe in the way how to write. I want to see how neat you are on the paper. You should be very smart on the paper. So I want to check your handwriting, and maybe I'll be commenting on the same, on the layout, how you write your essay, how you write your questions, on those things. I have also to advise you on the same. So I have to see you writing on the paper. That's why I'll need your photo of the handwriting written on the paper. I'll use the same to maybe to mark and again to comment on whatever I see. So this is the work that we had. So next time we also continue with another wonderful topic, that is the missionary factor in Malawi. So we are going to look at the missionary factor in Malawi. So this is yet another wonderful topic that we are going to look at. So be there, watch out for this topic again. It is already there on the DVD. So it's just a matter of your request. Get that call and request your DVD. Then instantly we are sending it to you. So watch out for that one again. It is a wonderful topic. So until that time when we'll be discussing the missionary factor, we stop there. Thank you so much.
Simutaya nthawi yanu kufunafuna maphunziro muzakhala wotumidwa moyo wanu wonse. Ngati simuphunzira anthu azingokutumani, ajala kalime, ajala kuchwe manyazi, ajala katende yanti, ndipo anthu ophunzira wandi wotumanso kwambiri. Ndiye ngati simuphunzira, skulu akuyikirani apa mukhala otumidwa.